Judges and referees, for the most part, look at it as a headache.
What can we do as business owners to protect ourselves by being proactive?
Once you going into court, even if you are, let's say a guy that does for the kids and stuff like that.
Things that are more important than just being a human ATM. The reason I started my own business is out of what I now call existential crisis, out of the custody dispute that I had involving parenting. And it was disappointing when I had other attorneys not seeing people that would advocate not only for me but for my child. And an intrinsic part of that is more or less this notion of, I felt after that particular situation, not only for myself as an individual, but for other men that were similarly situated, good dads, loving dads, bonded dads, capable dads, that clientele needed someone such as my mindset, with my mindset, over in family court. And I'll even do a contrast, like when I had my custody trial, for lack of a better way of saying it, involving my own daughter. Neither my attorney nor the opposing attorney, both of whom are supposed to be reputable, experienced family attorneys, gave an opening statement. And from where I come from, Frank Murphy, all the justice, trying jury trials, criminal cases, and all of that, it's considered malpractice if you don't make an opening statement. So I'm literally sitting there like, y'all don't think my baby worth an open statement? Literally sitting there. So I'm saying that to say, when I saw, for lack of a better way of saying it, people that were just grabbing money and not advocates who didn't really give a care, okay? And even in terms of the implicit bias against men, or the fact that equal justice under the law doesn't apply there, or, even going back as far as probably one of the worst Supreme Court cases ever decided, Plessy versus Ferguson, you have no rights here that we're bound to respect. When I saw, for lack of a better way of saying that, how bad family court was operating with respect to even a good dad in my own self, I felt compelled to start Father's Justice Law. And part of the reason, even from a social standpoint, separate and aside from the law, is that there are studies which reflect the fact that the more active that a dad is involved in a kid's life, and this goes across socioeconomic backgrounds. By that I mean it don't matter how much money you make or don't make, your race, your culture, whatever background you want to say. The studies demonstrate that the more involved dad is involved in their kid's life at any stage, whether they're 2, 12, 6, whatever age you want to pick, the more likely that child, one, at a relatively early age, is supposed to develop as far as their intelligence, their behavior is supposed to be better. And the long term, and that's just the short term ramifications. The long term ramifications is that oftentimes people that have a healthy relationship with their dad, and that's not always in the context of marriage, because people can be miserable married and come home and arguing and fussing every day in front of the kids. And that's not something that is healthy for a kid to see growing up, because how are they going to grow up themselves to have functional relationships in their romantic context when they've been exposed to dysfunction all their lives? So I'm saying that to say, when I realized, even going beyond my own personal situation, the societal implications here, that good dads are being pushed out of providing the cultural, economic, social, educational, and all the other things that are more important than just being a human ATM machine paying child support. I said, it compelled me to say, look, I have to craft a practice whereby we emphasize the other aspects of parenting, even an intellectual standpoint, even something as simple as helping your kid with homework, or during the summertime, making sure they're not falling behind because they're not in school full time, or this, that, and other, or exposing them to cultural activities that they may like or need to be exposed to even figure out what they like. All of that is very, very important. And so, even the long-term vision of Father's Justice Law is to make sure that the kids impacted have a happy, healthy, productive adulthood. I don't want any of the kids that come under the watch or purview of my practice to grow up and say, I'm miserable because I had to overcome from being alienated or abandoned by my dad. When in actuality, in many instances, is not that the dad purposely abandoned them in a situation of alienation. It's because a good dad was pushed out by the mom or by the court system.
So in a way, you trying to impact generations.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, okay. So that when listening to you and your purpose and drive behind the brand of Father Justice and Law, that's the perception I get. Like, okay, you know what? You looking to impact generations with this. Now, what was like? Did you have any hurdles with starting your own law firm? Like, what was the hurdles?
I think your business is y'all both and those always so
You got to say like where you probably like the main, probably the biggest one. So would it have been like finding other people within the firm? Like, what do you feel like is the biggest challenge you probably face?
In terms of, I think in any business, overhead, really promotion, getting your name out there, really, for lack of a better way of saying it, even establishing a brand identity, and people kind of being very clear or very aware, even your potential clientele, in terms of what your purpose is. One of the things that, and I'll just put it very bluntly, even in this regard, my purpose is not to be chauvinistic, it's not to be anti-women, it's not to even for men to quote unquote being a dictator over women or over their kids. I even had to part ways with one client who was disappointed because he had to basically share custody of his young son 50-50 with the mom, even though he had custody, and I more or less kind of retained him having custody. But he then had to give this relatively young child over to the mom. Well, my philosophy is that my purpose is that kids have a healthy, balanced relationship with both parents. If the other parent isn't endangering the kid, abusing the kid, about to kill the kid, stab the kid, shoot the kid, put them in the freezer, as you hear about some of these horrible stories. Short of a mom being abusive or neglectful, I'm not I was raised by a single mom. You get what I'm saying? So I'm saying that to say my purpose is not just to be chauvinistic or anti-woman or anti-feminist agenda or any of these kind of phrases that we hear bandied about. But my real purpose is to, even using the term you hear in court, is to really look after the best interests of that child.
Yeah, and I feel like, well, man, we need more guys like you. And the reason I say that is, okay, you need something that's specifically for men kind of going into that, because I feel like the odds are stacked against us in that realm of court like that. So yeah, I definitely think that. So
it also gives standards too, though.
Yeah.
For the father, so it's not like you just like, oh yeah, you're a father in crisis, because you just clearly pointed that out, and I'm glad that the audience heard that part. But it's not like, oh, you are a father in crisis financially, and you're going through it, whether divorce court or separation or whatever it is. But it's mostly about the child, but it's still a standard of how you should be as a father in this situation.
Yeah.
Like, understand that regardless, the child is the most important thing. You are still secondary to what the child needs, but what you understand and your firm understanding is that the child heavily needs that father in their life. That absence of a father is one of the reasons why, especially our culture, is the least thriving cultures out of all cultures in the United States or in the world, because of that absence of the father. So yeah, I appreciate you being the advocate for sure. So yeah, any guys that's out there, they definitely need, because that's a big part to be understanding that, like, understand what this is.
And to piggyback what you're saying, Milton, and there's so many societal ills that emanate from that, whether you talk about crime, whether you talk about poverty, whether you talk about mental illness. And I'm saying at any stage of, whether a kid is a teenager or whether they're 35 years old, a lot of times if they haven't had a dad in their life, they're more likely to engage in behavior that's not beneficial to any of us in society.
And because Patrick that did Valuetainment did a breakdown of this, I think 70% of homelessness was from fatherless homes. What else was it? I think 60% of like mental illnesses was from fatherless homes too. So you have a lot of stuff. And this research done by the Census, the Bureau Census. Violent crimes, all that. So it's just, I think that a lot of people don't see the impact that the father has on stuff. So that's one thing, like you said, We definitely appreciate you for that.
What was the question you asked me yesterday when we was working out? The things that you working on?
Communication.
Yeah, but it was what you phrased as in a question.
I don't remember.
Basically, it's like well, he was asking me like, what was the things that I should be focusing on?
Oh, what personal development goals are you focusing on?
Mm-hmm. What personal development goals that I'll be focused on? And I was just listening to you now and how you articulate and just looking at you as a package. We always talk about in business, you should be a package. That's the first thing represent you and your business is you. So then he was asking me what my personal development is, and I was saying communication is one, focus, and then the third one was really building on these relationships as we're forming. But I think that with being a lawyer, you guys most of it. You guys kind of like build on those personal developments, like that what comes with being a lawyer, because you have to articulate well in the courtroom and even to your clients, how you present yourself dressing, time, all of those things is like part of being a good lawyer, would you say?
Yeah, and that even gets me another idea, kind of speaking to something you said earlier, even about choosing a lawyer. You should even look to the extent to which your lawyer is committed to personal growth and development. And by that, I mean, it's like, unfortunately to me, and like I said, I'll say things that might get me in trouble later, but the state of Michigan does not require us as lawyers to do continuing education at all. It's not required at all. Most states require that lawyers do continuing education. And the reason that I emphasize that as important is because the laws are constantly changing. Just about every day there's a new case decided. And I read the emails every day that others are decided, but I also go to a lot of personal development inside and outside the law, even business. That's how I met both of you. You get what I'm saying? But I'm saying that to say, if your lawyer is the type that hasn't gone to like a class or a seminar since law school and they're 27 years out of law school, that's the wrong lawyer, because they're not really committed to staying informed of even the evolving changes in the law. So that would even be one of the questions I would ask them, like, to what extent are you committed to personal, and if they look befuddled, like they don't know what personal development, or you're in the wrong office.
that is a good question.
That's a good question. My question, where did you pick up your speaking skills at? Like, was that something you worked on? Because I remember coming to see you at your pitch competition. And I'm like, man, like I was moved by the time you got done. I'm like, man, he brought in all this. So like, is that something you constantly work on, or do you feel like that was kind of like a natural gift? Because you like it's one good thing to articulate something good, but it's another thing to like vocally articulate something, with power. So that's my question to you. Is that something like you worked on? How did you get better at that and all of that?
I think that's always been, God bless my mom. She cultivated that a lot, when I was growing up. I think that you have to be passionate about what you do. I'm passionate now about father's justice. I've always been passionate about advocating for people in court. So I'm saying that to say, and I hope I don't think I'm answering your question well, but it's just like, it's just an intrinsic part of me at this point. I've been trying cases now for 27 years. I still remember the very first one I tried. You get what I'm saying? So I don't really know how to answer that.
So it's just passion.
I think that but purpose, and I can't even give tribute to my mom. I think she always tried to, and this is an important part of parenting as even a dad. You always try to put your kid in situations that kind of build their self-esteem and their self-worth. And so I'm saying that to say, like, I don't remember being in a debate team in high school because I don't really one of the biggest misconceptions about lawyers is that we like to argue folk all the time. No, that ain't me at all. I like to advocate in such a way that I don't have to argue. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying that to say, but I was in a pre-law club. I remember in the 8th grade going to DCC and the Equal Justice Under Law. I remember before that going to seeing the Statue of Liberty. My daughter wanted to go there now. I'm probably going to have to take you there. You get what I'm saying? So I'm saying that to say, I think a lot of it is the way that you cultivate your child, and it just comes out. I mean, my dad, quite frankly, wasn't really that active in my life, but truth be known, I spoke to my cousin about him on the way here. That's part of the reason I was almost halfway around. So I'm saying that my mom never pushed him away. He always had an open line of communication in my household, even though he wasn't around much, for lack of a better way of saying it. So, I don't know. I don't think I answered your question.
I think you did, because when we was talking about like communication and then the examples that we gave, because we gave like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Hitler, like whether you agree with these guys or not, they was passionate. Mm-hmm. They did the other little things as well, like read, study, and all of that as well. But what really came out when they were speaking was passion. They was passionate about whatever it was, the topic that it was. So I think that a big part of articulating it in a more powerful way as well.
Yeah, and so how often do you see that like laws get updated, especially like when it comes like in the arena of this court, whether that's like custody, divorce, or criminal law? Like, is that like a frequent thing? Because it seems like you would have to really be studying that like all the time.
Yeah, and I do, and a lot of attorneys don't necessarily do that, but sometimes it depends upon how major or minor a development is. Like, a new case could come out Monday and I could read about it Monday. The good thing I would say about forefathers and men, although we're not at the stage yet of shared parenting in the state of Michigan that some other states have actually passed, there are still cases or laws for the most part that are starting to trend in the right direction, going toward that equality of justice, which is good, that I'm always happy to integrate, both in writing and orally when I go to court. But law is still, for lack of a better way of saying it, and I'm probably going to delve into some politics, I shouldn't with this either, but that antiquated 1970 Child Custody Act is still in effect. So it's still, for lack of a better way of saying it, if you don't get somebody with my mindset that's really willing to bring out some of the newer stuff, this, that, and the other, it's still, in a lot of respects, pushing good men or relegating. Judge Judy even has a quote on that. That's one of the things I referenced when you saw me. Men are oftentimes treated like second-class citizens in family court. And if the men are treated like second-class citizens in family court, the children are as well. So the laws do change, but just like you look at Roe versus Wade, or you look at even some of the affirmative action cases, they were both decided early 70s or mid 70s, like Baki, which is an affirmative action case, was decided in 77. I think Roe versus Wade was like 73, something like that. Those are two pivotal areas, and irrespective of how you feel about abortion or affirmative action, those are two pivotal areas of life that have actually seen shifts go from one extreme back to the other one since 1970. But the Child Custody Act in Michigan has remained the same.
Do you ever see that changing? Like, and what would it take for that to change?
Even in like the shared parenting group that I've been involved with, in terms of men, one of the things that's disappointing is the lack of men that are involved. I even remember myself personally even going to the Penobscot building one time, holding a side protesting, and this was during COVID, Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. So I'm saying that to say, until men and even their families, because I've talked to a lot of aunts and a lot of grandmothers that are negatively affected by this, because there's an African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. So when you push out the man, you're pushing out the paternal grandmother, you're pushing out the paternal aunt, all of whom can be wonderful people, because everybody has different gifts, skills, and abilities that they can bring to the table to help raise this child. So I'm saying this to say, until the people that are really adversely affected by this really take a strong, cohesive stand and say, look, we're not going to stand for this anymore, it won't change. Because as long as it's just one individual voice here and there saying, hey, I don't like the way my case was decided, it's not going to change. It's really going to take. I mean, I've always coming out of because as a kid I studied Dr. Martin Luther King and this that. So I'm saying that to say it would really take, to me, in my opinion, a movement similar to the civil rights movement, whereby masses of people, mainly dads, but like I said, other women that are affected as well, really coming forward saying, look, we don't like this anymore. We need to have this change.